So we are going to start talking about the different basic properties of math. So make sure you have your notes in front of you and make sure everything that I'm typing in on these blanks, you're writing in on your notes. So let's start with the first one. Expressions with the same value are called, this is equivalent expressions. Equivalent is just another word for equal. So expressions that mean the same exact thing are called equivalent or equal expressions. For example, in your notes here, if I have 7 plus 5, which equals 12, 6 plus 6 equals 12. So these are equivalent because when you solve them, you get the same answer. So equivalent means two expressions that mean the same thing. So for this one, we have an algebraic one, b plus 7 and 7 plus b. These are equivalent because if we were able to actually evaluate these, we would get the same exact answer. So that means if you plug in like a 2 for b, 2 plus 7 is 9, 7 plus 2 is 9. So you get the same exact answer. So basically it's just two math problems that equal the same amount. They could be numerical or they can be algebraic. So I want you to take a second and write down your own example of two expressions that would give you the same answer if you evaluated them. They could be numerical or algebraic. Okay, the next property, this is a property, it's called the commutative property. I'll make sure you're writing this in your notes. The commutative property states that the order that you blank or blank in does not matter. You will still get the same answer. So think of the four operations. We have adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. There's two operations that if you switch the order around, you're still going to get the same answer. Those would be multiplication and addition. It does not matter what way you do those, you're going to get the same answer. So this is called the commutative property. That means you can switch the order around and you get the same answer. So for example, 7 plus 5 is the same answer as 5 plus 7. They're both 12. 3 times 2 is the same answer as 2 times 3. They're both 6. So the order that you do the math in does not matter. You get the same answer. What two operations does the commutative property not work for? So think of what two operations, if you switch the order, you're not going to get the same answer. That would be subtraction and division. So for example, 6 divided by 2 is 3, but 2 divided by 6 is 1/3, so it's not the same answer. Give me an example of the commutative property. So right here, I want you to type in a math problem, either a multiplication or an addition, where when you switch the order around, you get the same exact answer. Okay, so let me see if you could try one for that. The next property, this states that if you regroup your parentheses around different multiplication or addition, you get the same answer. This is called the associative property. Associative, think of this as when you have friends, you associate with them. It means you hang out with certain groups. So that's how I remember this one. Associative has the word associate in it. And I like to think of when I hang out with certain groups of people, I'm associating with one group of friends, and then I have another group of friends, I'm associating with a different group. So associative means that you can regroup the parentheses around different multiplication or addition. You'll get the same answer. So if you look at this one, you have 7 plus 3 plus 2, and then again 7 plus 3 plus 2. The order did not change. The grouping of the parentheses did. So first they have the 3 and the 2 inside the parentheses. Then they have the 7 and the 3 inside the parentheses. You're still going to get the same answer. So the order does not change at all. Where the parentheses is what changes. So I want to make up your own. So right here, type in your own. It has to have at least 3 numbers because that's the only way you could change the grouping. So you have to have at least 3 numbers so that you can put parentheses around 2 and then around another 2. Make sure your order is the same, but your parentheses are going around different numbers. The next one, the blank property of 0 states that any number added to 0 equals itself. So this is the addition property of 0. That says if you take any number in the planet and you add 0 to it, you get the same number you started with. So for example, 17 plus 0 is 17. The next one, the blank property of 0 states that any number multiplied to 0 is 0. This is the multiplication property of 0. That says anything times 0 is 0. All right, so let's try some actual examples of these properties. So let's take a look at some examples of these. So what we're doing right now is we're using properties. Basically, you do this in your head. I'm going to write it out to show you for a couple, but the rest you're basically going to do in your head. So this is showing parentheses grouped around 12 plus x. So we just learned that the associative property says that you can regroup and get the same answer. with addition and multiplication. So in my head, I'm just thinking I'm going to do 12 plus 7 because those are actual numbers. So 12 plus 7 is 19. And then I'm just going to add an x to it. And that's as far as I can go because I don't know what x equals. So that's my simplified version, 19 plus x. So really all you're doing is just adding the numbers together. Same with this one. So I can regroup and put the parentheses over here, and then I could switch this order around to put the numbers inside. That's going to be the commutative property. Really, all I'm doing is adding 8.4 plus 6.1. That's going to give me 14.5. You would line up your decimals and then put a plus x at the end. So that's my answer, 14.5 plus x. All you're doing is adding the numbers and then adding the letter to it. Now this last one, a number next to parentheses means multiplication. So what you're going to do in this case is multiply the two numbers and multiply it by the letter. So 5 times 11 is 55. So 55 times y, which could also be written as 55y. So you're actually doing the commutative and the associative property, but you're doing them in your head. So you don't really have any work to show. So if it's an addition, add the numbers and add the letter to it. If it's a multiplication, multiply the numbers and then multiply the letter. So let me give you a couple of these to try. Okay, so you try these. So again, really no math to do. If it's an addition, add the two numbers and add the letter to it. If it's a multiplication, multiply the two numbers together, take that answer and multiply it by the letter. You're simplifying it, which means you can't really get a final answer because you don't know what the letter stands for. But simplified means make it as small and as easy as you can. So if you're adding, add the two numbers and add the letter to it. If you're multiplying, multiply the two numbers and multiply the letter by it. This is showing the multiplication property of 0, which states that anything times 0 is 0. So the other way of thinking of it again is multiply the two numbers together. 9 times 0 is 0. And then do 0 times p, which is 0, because the multiplication property of 0 states that anything times 0 is 0. For this one, multiply the two numbers together. 4.5 times 1 is 4.5, because anything times 1 is itself. And then do 4.5 times r. So anything times 1 is itself, anything times 0 is 0. So let me give you one of these to try. So you try this one. It's showing the multiplication property of 1, and this is actually showing the addition property of 0. So for the first one, add the two numbers together and add a letter. For the second one, multiply the two numbers together and multiply it by the letter. So try those two. All right, let's see if we could try this one. So this is doing it with a word problem. So let's take a look. They want us to write out the expression and then simplify it. So it says, you and 6 friends play on a basketball team. A sponsor paid $100 for the league fee. So we'll start with $100 for the league fee. X dollars for each player's shirt. So I'll put an X for each player's shirt. We don't know how much. And $68.25 for trophies. So $68.25 for trophies. Write an expression to find the total amount the sponsor paid. So if it's a total, we're adding all of this stuff together. So 100 plus X plus 68.25. Now, just like the other ones, add the two numbers together. So $100 plus $68.25 is going to be $168.25 plus X. We don't know how much they paid for the shirt, so we'll put an X for that. And that's as simplified as we can possibly get. Add the two numbers together and add the letter to it. So let me give you guys one of these to try. This will be your last one, so see if you can figure out. You hand out 425 programs on the first night of your school's variety show, P programs on the second night, and 520 programs on the third night. Write an expression for the total number of programs you handed out, and then simplify the expression. So total would mean add, so write out what it would look like as an addition problem, and then simplify it by adding the two numbers together and then adding the letter to it. So that's your last one, so give that a shot.